Right, let's get the decals on and then we can start looking at positioning other bits around them from that point onwards. Right, so decals are going down quite well. I don't think I've ever put a decal on a wood overlay before. It's helpful that it's all going on flat surfaces. Clearly, when we've got that dried and we're happy that it's settled okay, and it looks okay to me at the moment, so I'm just leaving it. We might need to soften it and just let it settle again into the grain, and then it'll need a good varnish so that it's the same matte as the deck, so we will have to do that. Got some little small rings to put on there, and then that's it for decals straight away. The other decals would be in the pools and things, which I'm not going to bother with. Time to prime this. I don't believe there is any grey decking on this. The whole thing is white, other than the bit we've already painted black. So I'm going to actually prime it in white. So I'm going to use my Ultimate Primer, which is the same as One Shot and various others that are the same product, just bottled in different bottles. So we're going to prime it in white, let that all dry off before we airbrush it again in the top coat of white. Hopefully that means everything keys in where we've got the brass and stuff. And to make it easy to handle, I'm going to stick some blue tack in this end where we've got nothing delicate. Make sure we've not got any blue tack blocking what needs to be painting. I can just hold that nice and easily now while we're painting that. I need very much to try and control how much paint I waste, because I always use too much. Yeah, I've taken the paint cup off. I do have a smaller paint cup, but I'm just going to put a couple of drops straight into the chamber there, because that's probably all we need right now. I'm going to put my mask on, so I'll let you watch, but I won't be talking to you. 16 weeks of storage has had its toll on the poor old Queen Mary 2. So my first step is to give it a bit of a clean down and get it back to a condition where we can start building on her. So an anti-static brush and some air, that should do the trick. So a little problem with the decals not setting on the deck very well. You can see it's wrinkled, really doesn't look good at all. So I'm just putting some microsalt on to see if we can get them to flatten. So we're going to just see if we can flatten them down a little bit, and then we'll seal them in and hopefully have nice flat painted on look. But there seems to be a fair amount of trapped air in there, so I'm wary that as we're softening this we don't want it to start breaking. My next job is a little bit of final prep on this. We've just painted the deck, grey decking, airbrush that in there, and that's just a first coat really. We'll do a second coat later on once we've got all the white paint down. But got a couple of gaps that have formed, so I need to just do some final fill on this before we get this get the white painted in. So before I was about to mask up and then I noticed them, so let's get that filling job done. So I'm going to use Humbrol model filler. I use old knife blades for applying and smoothing my filler, and what I do is when I finish with them I just let them dry and then I run a file over them, just get the filler off, clean the blade up, get it back to a usable condition. You can see this is an old blade with a snapped point, and it just allows me to use it as an applicator. It's quite a good way of getting filler on, I find, because you've got a nice perfectly flat edge there. So yeah, that will be fine. So let's get that out of the way. Where's my glasses? There we go. So we shouldn't need much for this job. Trouble with these types of fillers, and you know, the squadron type fillers, is if you don't use them for a while they can go a little bit hard. But generally I find the Humbrol one keeps better than the squadron one. Now you do have to be careful because obviously this type of filler has a mild adhesive property which melts the plastic in the same way as a liquid polished cement does. So it's really a case of applying it, letting it dry, and then sanding it smooth. Fortunately, this stuff, if you put it on thin enough, it dries really quickly. And my recommendation is, if you've got a big gap, is to put it on in layers and let it dry in between and do any cleanup around it at each stage, rather than trying to just pile it all in, because then you've got quite a long waiting time to get it to dry. Okay, I think that is everything. This part was quite difficult to fit, and that's why we've got this new emerged gap. It didn't fit at all well, and we had to do a lot of messing around with it, cutting it to size to make it fit the deck piece. So that's why we've got these issues with gaps, because the parts have been, this part here has been quite heavily modified to make it fit. There we go. So we'll just let that dry for a few minutes, and then we'll be able to give it a light sand. And I'll leave that on my blade now. I have 3 or 4 blades in my pot, so if I'm doing lots of filling jobs, I've got options, but we'll let that dry off, and then when it's hard we can just flake it off with the file, as you saw. So that is that filling job done.
Here we see Queen Mary under construction on the 24th of February 1931 at the John Brown shipyard at Clydebank outside of Glasgow in Scotland. We see the hull there and various decks and bulkheads being erected. Here they are plating one of the decks, and we can see the frames running along there on the right hand side or left hand side. rather. And in fact, you can see the frames there on the right hand side as well. And this is what the shell plating would be attached to. And here she is on the slipway of the John Brown yard. But sadly, because of the Great Depression, work was suspended for many, many months. And it was only when a member of Parliament suggested that the White Star Line merge with Cunard and that a new company be formed, that the government would advance Cunard a loan in order to complete the ship. Work had stopped because of the Great Depression, and so work resumed on the 3rd of April 1934, but only after 130 tons of rust had been removed from the ship. Here she is immediately prior to her launch, and Her Majesty Queen Mary came up to Clydebank with the King to give the ship her name, and she was launched on the 26th of September 1934. Much speculation that the Cunard Company wanted to call the ship Queen Victoria, but when the King was asked could Cunard use the name of the country's most distinguished queen, the story goes that assumed that they were talking about his wife, and that's how the ship became to be called Queen Mary. It's a nice story, but I doubt if there's any truth in that. Here she is fitting out in John Brown's famous outfitting dock. In fact, the only part of the shipyard to remain, now it's closed for a number of years and is now actually the land is used as a technical college, is that basin there and the crane you can see on the right hand side. That is now a museum. Now, so big was Queen Mary that you could fit Cunard's first ship, the paddle steamer Britannia, and the 3 ships of Christopher Columbus within her main dining room, just as you can in the new Queen Mary 2. 3 locomotives could have steamed through a funnel of the original Queen Mary. And here we see her at Clydebank being manoeuvred down the River Clyde towards the open sea. A very perilous journey because the water was so shallow and the ship hasn't got her lifeboats, and she is especially light to enable her to run down in the relatively shallow water. She did run aground en route to the sea, but luckily the tugs were able to pull her off, and she made it down to the end of the river without undue mishap. Further pictures of the ship, and then off on sea trials, running at full speed. Very majestic sight. And here we see the ship arriving in Southampton, actually in the King George V dock. And we see all the land that was reclaimed in Southampton to build the new docks, including the dry dock. We see the 3-funnelled Majestic, which was a sister ship to the Berengaria. She would soon be withdrawn by Cunard and would become a cadet ship for the Royal Navy. And then behind her there's a 4-funnelled ship. That's one of the 4-funnelled Union Castle ships that ran from Southampton down to Cape Town.
Well, it has been a little while since I did anything on the Queen Mary 2, so I've just had to sort of reappraise where I'm up to and remind myself what the plan was. And I've been looking at it, and I feel that probably I was about to miss something. All this glazed balconies that need to go in, I was sort of planning on coming back to a bit later on, I think. But actually, the installation of them means having free access to the top is probably a good thing for putting them in and maybe clamping them or whatever might be needed. So that's what we're going to do. So my next job is to get out the stuff for this side. Now, I'm only going to do one side on just for speed of the build. We'll do one side and then I'll do the other side off camera later at some point, but for the purposes of the build we'll do this side. So with that in mind, I need to get all of these parts out. Okay, just want to show you a couple of bits that I've just done ahead of doing all these balcony screens. Apologies, I'm hand holding the iPad, so I'm trying not to shake it too much. But you can see the elevator glazing is done, which is this bit here. So it was given 2 coats of the crystal black, which is like an equivalent of Tamiya's smoke translucent black on the inside, so that we kept the shine of the plastic on the front, and then the little window dividers have been painted in with a black Posca paint pen, and the same with the white section in the center there. It's a white Posca paint pen. You can also see that we started painting in some of these little walkways and things that we've added, and then we've also added the glazing here. Now the Posca pen wouldn't work on that because it really needs a primer, and the clear plastic parts are just too shiny for the paint to adhere, so they've all been hand painted as best as I could. So the next thing is putting all the little balconies in. So I have painted those in the grey black Posca pen for the, there we can see it better if I do that, black Posca pen for the stanchions, and then the wooden top is hand painted in with Vallejo's mahogany. So my next task is to start adding all this balcony glazing. I'm hoping that I've done it all and it's just a matter of cut it off, clean off the nubs and plop it in place. So let's see how that goes. So just a little bit of liquid poly in there, and then we can put the part on and put it into place like so. Just pushes back on, you can see these here which hold it into the right place. Just make sure it's square. Yep, that's good. So that is the first one on. So that's these little parts here, 148. So we've got 2 of those. So let me just do the other one. I'm finding that if I snip this off very carefully, cleanup isn't required. I'll get it in the tweezers so that as soon as that glues down, we can place it in. In fact, I am going to just sand this one a little bit. It's just got a small nub on it. There we go. There we go, happy with that. And then obviously here we have these much longer ones, so let's have a look at putting a couple of those in. So exactly the same process. Put some liquid poly down, but because of the length of this part, we're going to have to do it slightly differently, I guess. So I've put some liquid poly down, and I'm going to give it a second coat, because that first one will already be starting to evaporate, and when you put a second layer of glue on, the evaporation is slower because it's sat on top of already wet glue. There we go. Get it in at one end, and it just pops into place. Just pushing it down, making sure it's pushed back along the full length. There we go. Okay, that's the first balcony in, and it's certainly changing the look in there, isn't it? Yeah, definitely. With the floors that have got wood flooring in, I'm just having to just make sure that it doesn't protrude, getting in the way of seating the part. So I'm just going down, and anything that's coming out further than these bulkhead points, we're just trimming that down and removing it so that the balcony will go in okay. There we go. So that's how I'm going to tackle putting the glazing in on all these balconies. I'm not going to do the rest of that on camera. I'm going to rattle through this, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done and what's next. Okay, rigging time on our foremast, main mast. I'm not sure which one they call it, but it's pretty much the only mast. So all the rigging on this is in white, not black. So don't make the mistake of doing it in black. It should all be white. I'm using a white nylon, so it's nice and stretchy. And I've got some detail picks up that Stephen kindly took for me, so I can see exactly how this needs to be rigged. So we've basically got 3 flag lines, and then another line that's coming up here. So on the instructions are not correct when it comes to this yard arm here. It has 2 rigging points, but from what I can see, it is actually only 1. In fact, it's going from this point here up to the yard arm and then being tied off on one of the connection points for the ladder here. So that's probably the last one you'd want to put on, but in fact, because it's tying off on the ladder, it needs to be the one that we put on first. Otherwise, these ones will get in the way as we these ones will get in the way. These flag lines will get in the way. So that's the one we're going to do first. So we're going to get a length of thread. Okay, and first thing I'm going to do is it's a self-closing tweezer. If I put that on the end, then I know where the end is and I don't lose it. Okay, and then we can cut a little bit off. That'll be more than enough for this job. Okay, now I do have a small hole in the photo etch. Whether this is going to go in, I don't know. no is the answer. So I'm actually going to start by gluing the end of the line on that termination point. So that'll be my start point. So I'm using some medium C8. A little bit of glue on that front face there. I'm actually looking at my iPad because I get a better picture than using my glasses. Okay, that appears to be on. Okay, there you go. You can see that I'm holding it down and putting the tension on, so we can just hold that in place. Now, we actually need to move it up the yard a little bit because it pretty much goes right at the tip of the yard there. There we go, that'll do. So the flag lines all terminate on here. Makes it nice and easy for threading, because we can go from the top, stretch it underneath, a little bit of glue on the inside, then trim it. So I love the fact that they've put little loops in here, like you might somehow find something small enough to thread through, but this line is way too thick to go through. So a little bit of glue on the underside of the line termination point, and we'll just now we can use the self-locking tweezers as a weight for this now. So pull it tight. There you go, nice and tight. I want to just move that back to the corner a little bit. Okay, that's being held in place now. Right, I'm going to carry on doing this, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. we're going to paint the funnel, starting with the this bit, which is solid black, and I'm actually going to paint it in black enamel, Humbrol 33, and then we can sort the finish out once it's dry, before we paint the other parts which are going to get assembled around it. So there's a lot of red to do on this. The black actually really stands out, and then we need to metallize these with heat staining a little bit on top for them to look truly authentic. But we're going to use the black enamel. It means I don't have to mess around with primers and stuff. Just got a little bit of filling and final prep to do before we can do that. Now we do have a little modification to do on the funnel. The moulded in platforms which mount the two horns need to be replaced by the photo etch that's in the platinum set. So we need to take these off and sand this smooth. So I'm just going to rough it out first with an old pair of sprue cutters. These aren't the ones I use for removing parts from the sprue, but they're still handy for little jobs like this. So we can trim it down quite quickly using the cutter. There you go. Okay, and then we can simply sand it smooth from there. So I'm going to start with a 220. Just take the worst of it down. There you go, nice quick job. Then we can go in with a 400 opposite direction. That helps take out any scratches we put in on the more coarse abrasive. That's pretty much smooth already. Okay, I'm just going to use a pencil to mark in its position. And we will just finish it with a 600 and then an 800. There we go. You'd never have known that there was something moulded into that. Okay, right. Let's get the photo etch done. The easiest way of locating the platforms is actually to put the ladders on first, I think, because that'll set the height for the platforms. So I have some thin CA, and we're just going to dab the ladder into the thin CA, which should give us enough, and it goes just behind this last pipe here. Make sure it's straight. think that is on. But I am just going to make sure. There we go, that should be nice and secure. Now, the platforms have one arm that goes up and one arm that goes down. So I'm going to start with the up arm. Then we'll do the down arm. And our platform should go on like so. Okay, I just need this bottom bracket just to get into contact with the funnel side. There we go. Not quite. There we go, that is the platform for the horn. Now the horn should be black as well, so we'll dig that out of the kit in a sec and mount that on, because obviously I've not got the turn brass parts. So I'll do the other side and get back to you when we're putting the horn on. Right, those are two little caps that go on the funnel on the two large ones there. So we just need a spot of glue and we can plop them into place. I think that's straight, looks straight to me. Okay, that's looking good. Right. These are our little horns. Now if you've got the full platinum set, you've got turned brass replacements for these. But I can just simply glue them onto their platforms. So go on the top of the platform, which is making life nice and easy.